And we're rolling. What's going on, folks? Welcome to episode 16 of the Next Man Up Injury Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Allen, once again joined by the dynamic duo of Erik Kreil and Matthew Walters. Thanksgiving is now behind us, and I don't know about you guys, but I personally am not thankful. Let me correct myself. Not thankful for the events of what happened in fantasy football this weekend. I got blanked. I did not win a single matchup across the board. Tough week. And then we factor in injuries. So it's going to be a fun one tonight. Matthew, how'd you fare this week? Hopefully better than me.
So I wasn't that bad, but I did lose the majority of my matchups. But I did clinch the playoffs in two of the leagues that I lost in. So
all right.
Thank you to other people losing in that league.
You are not the biggest loser.
I'm not.
Nothing like winning by losing. Erik,
it's like that meme where the guy's in third place and spraying the champagne.
Yes.
That's all right. Everybody gets a trophy. Just kidding. Erik, I assume you escaped this week scot-free. All your team's still undefeated?
12-0.
I mean, just the perfect man, the perfect rosters, the perfect everything.
When your brain is this big, it's how can you lose?
Gosh, I can see it shining from here. All right. Well, we are here to talk about injuries. And as we all know, an injured player cannot do much for your team because he's sitting on your bench or in your IR. But that's where we come in. We're here to help you find out how long you might be missing that player and who you can rely on to replace them. Here at the Next Man Up, we have a saying that the best ability is availability. So let's get to it. For the sake of organization, we're going to split the news up by position as always. So to get things rolling, we are going to start at the QB position. And Matthew actually texted us this morning and said, hey, we've got a late addition to the QB injury report. So kick us off. Daniel Jones has a neck injury. What's the latest?
Yeah, so supposedly he strained his neck a little bit during the game. Unclear exactly when it happened. Reports said early, but then he played through it. I guess overnight and into the next couple days, it just really started aggravating him. So he's actually doubtful now.
Wow.
So usually when players get listed as doubtful, they don't play kind of in this new age NFL with all their stuff. In fact, I can't even think of one that has been listed doubtful and then ended up playing. So look for his backup, which I believe is Mike Glennon.
Hey, speaking of necks,
in that game.
Mike Glennon, he, as JJ likes to say, he of the long neck. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just look up his stock photo and you will understand the giraffe man himself. All right, Erik, I feel like we've been talking about Kyler Murray for weeks now, probably because we have, but what's the latest on his ankle coming off of a bye week?
Yeah, I mean, I think realistically he could have played 2 weeks ago, but they held him out just basically considering that they're, trying to go far in the playoffs. So I'm fully expect Kyler Murray to play this coming week. And I don't think he'll be very limited, with his rushing ability.
Yeah, coming off of a bye week, plenty of time to rest. He's missed several weeks before that. If he's not ready to go now, I don't know that when we do see him back, he would be reliable as 100%. But if he can't go, Colt McCoy will continue to fill in for him. And he's done a serviceable job for NFL means and for fantasy. I mean, obviously he's not an elite option, but he's a serviceable, second quarterback in a super flex league, depending on the matchup. Matthew, Justin Fields dealing with a rib injury, was out last week. We saw Andy Dalton take the reins for him in Chicago. Are we going to see the red rifle again?
I'm leaning towards yes, because it turned out, as we found out later in the week, that Justin Fields did have some rib fractures after he got a MRI done. So I think I mentioned it last week that
sure did.
We've been seeing that a lot this year, where they say, "Oh, it's just bruised ribs," and then later in the week you find out, "Oh, they're actually fractured." So I doubt he plays. If I was them, I wouldn't play him. Why risk your franchise QB to further injury? But sometimes rib fractures can be something that can be played through. So important to keep an eye on the practice reports and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Something like a rib fracture, especially once the initial swelling and inflammation goes down and you get a better imaging, you end up seeing more. So Good call on that one. I think you hit the nail on the head last week explaining it, so I won't go on any further. Erik, Zach Wilson played last week. Didn't really look stellar, but it turns out he tweaked his knee again. Do we think he's going to be okay to play this week, or does the carousel continue in New York?
Yeah, I mean, Zach Wilson was clearly hobbled during most of that game. You can see him limping during some of his runs. And I mean, that's the issue with pushing the recovery timeline on injuries that involve your ligaments, like his PCL, where, medically you may feel like it's safe structurally, but the player, the person, is still lacking that inherent stability that goes along with that, that goes along with the full recovery. So, I mean, I think that he'll be a go with a knee brace next week. They may tinker this week with which brace he prefers. Either way, I mean, frankly, if you're banking on Zach Wilson to help you win a matchup, then you're in a tough spot. But I think he'll be a go, and he'll give it his best shot next week.
Yeah, especially at this point in the season, I would hate to be stuck in that position. But with this many QB injuries for us to talk about, it's unfortunately a reality for some of us.
Yep.
Matthew, speaking of unfortunate realities, Carolina's quarterback situation is just a mess right now. Sam Darnold's still dealing with the shoulder injury. Do we think he could come back? Cam got benched last week. What's the answer in Carolina?
The answer in Carolina is I don't know, because you're probably going to be drafting a QB, but not a lot of people like the QBs in this next class. So, in all honesty, the answer was probably Justin Fields last year, but y'all screwed that one up. So Sam Darnold could return. Now, was he affected by? I wish my cats would stop running. My God!
I just saw a blur of fur behind you.
A blur of fur.
Welcome to live.
You gotta love it.
Anyway, so can he return? It's possible. I mean, it's towards the end of the timeline that was given, and if they activate him off IR, now who do they stick with? Do they go back to Sam Darnold, see was this shoulder injury kind of hampering him, and see if he can maybe be the future, or can he
football meets Animal Planet over
or
here.
can he
Animals gone wild?
Or is Cam Newton going to be the one taking the reins for the foreseeable future? Who knows exactly? I mean, we'll talk about a certain Carolina running back later that's now not playing the rest of the year as well. So
what year is it?
The answer seems to be Carolina losing the rest of their games and seeing how good of a draft position they can get.
Hey, all I'm saying is Sam Howell wouldn't have to move very far from UNC, and I mean he could kind of keep some of the powder blue and white, accessories and stuff he's got going for him. I don't know. Nothing makes sense in Carolina right now. Erik, Teddy Bridgewater dealing with a shin injury. We saw a little bit of Drew Lock this week. Who's it going to be?
Yeah, I mean, Teddy left in the second quarter with what's so far been a very ambiguous shin injury. We know that he got x-rays to rule out anything nefarious, and those were negative. So, that would indicate that it's just a soft tissue injury. The really good news is that he was cleared to return to the game, and he got it out another half of football. So my guess is that they'll rest him this week, and he'll be ready to roll at near 100% this coming week.
Nefarious. I like how you just slid nefarious in there. I don't know that I've ever used that word in a sentence. Thank you for that.
It means spooky and not good.
Yeah, I love it. I'm here for it. We're learning tonight, boys. All righty, Matthew. Aaron Rodgers. Speaking of live, I don't know if you caught it. Aaron Rodgers had one of the moments of the NFL season during a press conference in which he took his shoe and sock off, threw his foot up on the desk. I'm not going to do it for the sake of the viewers. Barefoot on the desk and said, "Look, I have a broken toe." So, Matthew, how bad is this broken toe? Is this something he's going to keep playing through?
I mean, I guess he's still going to play through it. He's played 2 games with it, so why not keep continuing? I guess it's just a pain tolerance thing. A lot of times with a broken toe, there really isn't a whole lot you can do anyway, except for just rest and let it heal, which seems like he's getting his rest throughout the week and just not practicing and then suiting up and still lighting it up on game day. So yeah, I would assume he still keeps playing, and unless he injures it worse than it already is, then I think we're good rolling Aaron Rodgers out there the rest of the year.
Alrighty, no Jordan Love this week, most likely. Erik, last one for the QBs here. Jalen Hurts has been a standout. You picked the positive adjective. He's been fantastic for fantasy this year, but he's dealing with an ankle injury. Do we think he's going to be able to go this week, or is it finally time for some Minshew mania in 2021?
No, I think he'll be ready to roll. I mean, this is another ambiguous coach speak of a sore ankle. I mean, it could mean anything from like a low grade sprain to even a slight bone bruise. Either way, these kinds of injuries just need rest, which he'll get over the next 2 weeks, given the bye.
Right.
You might be genuinely concerned about the power of his performance coming back. Just knowing that Hurts' fantasy appeal has been largely reliant on his rushing ability. I think it's that he's only passed for more than 200 yards in 4 games this year, and it's already week 12. So, if you're a manager and you're relying on his ability to be mobile, you might have a slight concern, but something like a sore ankle where he's going to get rest, it's not something that's really, pushing the needle on my radar for him and what he's going to do in the coming weeks.
Alrighty. Good to hear for Jalen Hurts managers. Alrighty, moving on to the running backs. Matthew, you already alluded to Carolina running back out for the rest of the season. I'm heartbroken because I literally the week before this happened traded for Christian McCaffrey in a league where I was hurting at running back, and here we are. What's the news?
Yeah, this just sucks. I mean, another year of Christian McCaffrey just being hurt all year, and now he's missing the rest of the year. He got put on IR again, and I believe the way it works with the new IR rules in the NFL, when you get put on a second time, it has to be season ending. So whether this truly was season ending or not, he was put on it, so he's going to miss the rest of the year, which is unfortunate, but I mean, probably for his sake, Carolina didn't seem to be really playing for anything anymore anyway. So I'm curious if that partly went into the decision-making process there.
Yeah, he's definitely the face of the franchise there. And as you said, they're kind of phoning it in for the rest of the year in Carolina. So holding him out only makes sense. Let him get all the way healthy and ready for next season. I feel like we said this last year, but here we go again. Next man up there is obviously Chuba Hubbard. He handled most of the snaps at running back earlier in the season when CMC was out, and I feel like he's a reliable flex option, if not an RB2 most weeks. Erik, Kareem Hunt came back last week off of a calf injury. He was activated off of the IR. He only played 39% of the snaps, and he was held out of their last drive. Do we have an update? Did he retweak that injury, or was it more just a snap count thing?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I mean, if you fired up Hunt last week, you had to have had your expectations tempered just considering the length of time he's been out. I mean, that's really telling of the kind of injury that he's recovering from. And he is the 1B on a team since they can easily lean on Nick Chubb without missing much of a beat. So, I think that the team is just easing Hunt back into the lineup. And, the good news is that they get a bye this coming week. And that's really what Kareem needs, is just more active rest and time to ease back into the workload of a full game. So, I think that you'll be much more happy with him when he plays Baltimore in 2 weeks. I think it was really just a matter of, trying to make sure that Hunt can actually perform, given the nature of his injury.
Yeah, getting that extra week of rest and therapy is certainly going to be a positive thing for him. And I'm excited to see what he can do in the last push at the end of the season here. Matthew, DeAndre Swift on Thanksgiving went down after a hard tackle on the sideline. They're reporting that it was a shoulder injury. What exactly happened, or do we know? Is it still just kind of being an ambiguous shoulder?
So they've called it a shoulder sprain. Now, which part of the shoulder, who knows? I'm leaning towards the way he came down. It sort of seems like it's AC joint, which means it's going to be very difficult, especially when he's a pass-catching back, to reach up and catch the ball. Their coach has already said it's hard to see him playing this week, so I highly doubt he suits up this week. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he misses next week as well, and then hopefully he's back after that. I mean, they haven't put him on IR, so I wouldn't think it's a 3-week injury. But as we saw earlier in the year with Christian McCaffrey and his hamstring, I guess you never truly know. And at the end of the day, the Lions really aren't playing for anything either. And Swift seems to be a big part of their future as well. So something to keep an eye on. Being a young back, I mean, he's going to want to play, but they might kind of, let's make sure you're absolutely 100% before we get you back out there.
Yeah, he's certainly has been the highlight of that team all season, and seeing him go down was tough. I agree with you. The mechanism, it looked like AC to me. Whenever it happened, that's what I said to my family. Is like, oh, that's probably AC. And so we'll see. I like that you mentioned the IR thing, because that crossed my mind as well. Well, they haven't put him on IR yet, so I don't think that this is going to be a 3-week injury. And if it does end up, then they'll probably go ahead and throw him on it. But I mean, Jamal Williams looked good in his relief after he got hurt. I would expect that he's a solid RB2 candidate. He's got the ability to have the passing upside. Not quite as good as Swift as a runner, but he's definitely got the passing game upside, and I would expect he'll kind of get the bell cow role.
I would agree, and maybe Jamar Jefferson kind of gets a little.
Yeah, we might finally get a little more Jamar Jefferson run.
So who knows? Kind of a deep dynasty dive there.
Get the rookies in there. Let's see it. Alrighty, Erik, your boy. What is going on with Dalvin Cook and his shoulder? He's got a history of shoulder injuries. We've talked about it before. This time they're saying torn labrum. So what does that mean for his recovery?
It means bad. Yeah, I mean, Cook's been dealing with his shoulder injury since 2014. The labrum plays a really important role of deepening the socket joint for stability. And once that's injured, it really won't ever be the same. And that's why recurrence rates are so high. I think most studies mark the likelihood of a re-injury as somewhere between 70 and 80% for folks his age. Really the smart thing to do would be to get surgery, which we know can give him back some stability. And it's been shown that surgery can decrease re-injury rates, as little as 20%. But there are reports coming out, I know, that's saying he could rest it and come back later in the season. I think that would be a really bad move.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tough for him to make a comeback this season, but it is feasible. They've got all kinds of bracing and stuff they can do, but at the end of the day, the risk of re-injury really isn't worth it in my eyes, but it's between their athletic training staff and the player to make that decision. In the meantime, Alexander Madison will likely take on the first team reps for them with another rookie. Let's get him in there, Kenny Nwangwu. We talked about him in the preseason when we were talking about the NFC North, excuse me. I'm curious to see what he can do if he can get some run this week. Alrighty, Matthew, Miles Sanders. I feel like he's one of those guys that we talk about way too much, unfortunately. He's dealing with an ankle/foot ambiguous thing going on. He tweaked it this week after coming back off of, I believe he was on IR as well and came back. Tweaked it this week. Did he suffer any setbacks, or was it just kind of a little scare?
It's hard to tell exactly. Now the coach did say he's heading in the right direction, so maybe it was just kind of lingering soreness, getting back right into an actual game, kind of aggravated it a little bit, but didn't necessarily re-injure it. So that's kind of where my mind's at with it right now. Now, the Eagles seem to hate him, though, and not want to give him the ball a whole lot, which I don't know whether I agree or disagree with that. I was kind of high on Miles Sanders coming into the year, and it's kind of been a weird year for him. So I would expect him to play, but do you actually want to play him is a different story.
Yeah. This week, I believe they're playing the Jets, which is one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. And if there was ever a week to start him and hope that he's going to finally hit his home run stride, I feel like this is the week. Hopefully he can get healthy, get some therapy in this week, and get ready to roll. If not, Kenny Gainwell and Boston Scott are the RBs to know in Philly, as Jordan Howard is currently listed as out as well.
Yeah, it sounds like Boston Scott's going to have 3 touchdowns this week.
Probably. It's Boston Scott's annual 3-tutty week.
Exactly.
Once a year.
Once a year. It's Boston Scott Day. Alrighty. If I had a penny for every time we talked about Rashad Penny, my word. And Eric, ooh, we're doubling down. Rashad Penny, and guess what? It's an Eric hamstring injury. Get ready, folks. What's going on, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you're still holding out for Rashad Penny, you should please stop. There's
help.
No, really. I mean, this is no commentary on him as a player or as a person, but Penny will really never be a thing in the NFL, unfortunately. I mean, the NFL is a brutal sport, and you really have to have it all together to be productive, especially as a running back. So, given Rashad's injury history that's extensive and frequent, and given the nature of this hamstring injury, especially for this year, he's not going to be helpful to your team. I don't think that he's going to be helpful to your team next year. But there's a lot can happen between now and then.
Yeah, certainly tough to see for a player that had a lot of promise, but he just can't shake the injury bug. Alex Collins, I feel like, is the only healthy running back really of interest. Obviously, Chris Carson's been on IR for a few weeks now. Travis Homer was kind of interesting one week, but he's currently dealing with his own injury. So Alex Collins is really the only running back of note in Seattle. And I don't know that we can really even rely on him outside of a desperation flex play in a really deep league.
Yeah. It's a small note. Fine print.
Yes, absolutely. Alrighty, Matthew, another late addition. Darrell Henderson was popped up on the injury report with a quad injury. What's the latest with him? We think he's going to be okay, or is this going to be a multi-week thing?
Yeah, they're not really clear on if it was like a quad bruise type thing or if he strained his quad. With kind of the nature of how it was announced and that he didn't leave the game, I would think it's more of a quad bruise. Like he took a weird hit to the leg during the game, didn't really think of it, had the adrenaline running, woke up the next day like, whoa, that's sore. So if that is the case, I really wouldn't think he misses time with it. It's just kind of a thing you work through and pain tolerance. But definitely something to keep an eye on as the week progresses on if he's actually practicing or not for the Rams.
Yeah, quad strain and a quad bruise are definitely very different things. For his sake and for fantasy manager's sake, we're going to hope that it's just a bruise. If he can't go, Sony Michel is likely just going to fill right in as the lead back there. I would expect that he'd get plenty of run without Henderson, but Henderson has definitely been the RB to know in LA this year. Eric, last running back for us here, and it was last night on Monday Night Football. J.D. McKissick suffered, it looked like a scary neck injury, ended up getting carted off, but he's only being listed as questionable last I saw. Do we have any updates on his status and what's going on?
We really don't, but what we know is that it wasn't anything nefarious or too nefarious. I think that this is one of those cases where the injury looked worse than it actually was. The staff, because of the nature of the injury and what, everything that it possibly could have been, like a fracture to his vertebra in the neck, I think that they were appropriately conservative. But what it's really sounding like through the information that is out there and the information that's not being put out there is that this is much more of a mundane injury. So, there's still more information to come out. I'm certain that they're going to do more testing. There may even be swelling right now that's convoluting some of the test results. But I think the good news is that it wasn't anything too serious so far. It's sounding like it's going to be okay.
Yeah, that's certainly good news if that is the case. We'll keep our eyes and ears out for more updates on J.D. McKissick, but good job by the athletic training staff there to use an abundance of caution with a neck injury for sure. If he's not in the game, obviously Antonio Gibson's the lead back there, but we'll probably get to see some more. Here's another rookie for you, rookie running back week. Jarrett Patterson will likely get a little more run with some late down work in Washington. Alrighty, moving on to wide receivers. Matthew, I'm going to give you a hamstring now. DeAndre Hopkins has been out for a few weeks, coming off the bye. Is he kind of in the same boat as Kyler Murray? Are we expecting him to be ready to go?
I would think so, but as we know with hamstring, there is a high likelihood that it can be re-injured, and heck, he might even end up playing and then runs one go route and pulls up again. They're just
knock on wood right now. Thank you.
they're just a fickle injury. So he has been out a few weeks. They never put him on IR, so they didn't expect it to be more than really a 3-week injury, which kind of tells us that wasn't a grade 2 or grade 3 hamstring strain for sure. So we'll just we'll see. I mean, once again, I know I say this a lot, but it's going to be a real keep an eye on the practice reports on if he's getting full participation in practice or if he's limited, and kind of make your judgments based off of that, especially if he's a non-participant. That tells us a whole lot of information. But yeah, we'll see. I would imagine he plays. It's been a few weeks with it, and they got the bye, and it seems like they were being cautious. Obviously, they have playoff hopes in Arizona, so they're not trying to get their star players out for the season. So hopefully that's kind of where they were at, and he'll be back this week.
But regardless of what they want, I want D-Hop back. Will you go clear him for me? Do you have that ability?
I don't have that
You do.
ability per se, but we can try to speak it into existence.
Word. Come back soon, D-Hop. We miss you. Alrighty, Erik, speaking of players that disappeared this year, Allen Robinson, do we have any updates on his status?
It's a really tricky one because, as we know, hamstrings are really difficult to come back from mid-season, and they're even super hard to predict without any sort of insider information, being able to see and feel the exact results of the test. But what we know is that hamstrings, what they need is that a lot of rest, and they also need a period of gradual loading and exercise. And then they'll need sort of a return to sport phase where that gradual loading becomes more sport specific. I think a safe guess is that he achieves, sort of these 3 phases by the Green Bay game in a few weeks. I think that's actually going to give him exactly 4 weeks. But anything can happen between now and then. I think at this portion of the season, this is also where some players, they start to really consider, okay, what am I going to do next year? Right. They start looking at their own health and prioritizing that if their team isn't in immediate contention. So, I wouldn't factor that out as, something that may play a role in how long Allen Robinson is out. Overall pessimism is my lesson here. But anything is possible. And Allen Robinson, he's been a competitor since day one.
Shout out Kevin Garnett. It's the best interview ever. Anything is possible. Okay. Yeah. If he continues to miss time, Darnell Mooney is the only receiver that really gets me excited in Chicago. He's always a deep threat, and really lately he's been getting a good target share. But Cole Kmet actually had 8 catches last week, so he's certainly one to keep an eye on as long as Andy Dalton's playing. Justin Fields didn't really go to the tight end as much, but looked like Kmet and Dalton had a really good connection. Dallas, Erik. I don't know why I skipped over Matthew. I usually alternate. Sorry. Matthew, you don't get to talk about your team. Erik, Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, they have a Thursday game again this week. Do we have a quick update on them?
Yeah, I think they'll both play. Word is that Lamb, made it to but not through the final stage of his concussion protocol. That would definitely indicate that he's had plenty of time to complete that final phase. And Amari Cooper was really out for the COVID protocol, as I recall.
Yeah.
So, short answer is yeah, you'll see them both this Thursday.
Word. If for some reason something pops up and one or neither of them can go, Michael Gallup will certainly be the name to know there. All right. The Rams finally get a long touchdown out of OBJ. It looked like he was back, and now we have a mysterious injury coming up. Initially listed as a back, then Sean McVay said, no, his back's fine. He's just carrying our team or something like that. I don't know. And then reported that they found that he had a hip pointer. So, Matthew, what's up with OBJ?
Yeah, so has a hip pointer, and if you don't know what that is, basically it's a bruise right to your hip bone. Very, very painful. Does not feel good, but really at the end of the day, it's a pain tolerance thing. There's no structural damage. There's nothing particularly wrong with the area, but it just kind of depends on the player on if it's something that they can play through or not. The athletic trainers there can always add extra padding that goes around the area, usually like a little donut pad where you can't really hit it per se. But we'll just kind of have to wait and see what his pain tolerance is. I mean, it was nice to actually see him have a good game, which felt like was the first one in a few years,
Yeah.
but uh, we'll see. Usually it's something you can play through as long as you have a high pain tolerance. But one hit to it, it will hurt, and it very well could knock you out of the game after that, just because it's not going to feel great once it's hit.
Yeah, it certainly won't encourage you to get back in the game anytime soon. But thankfully, it's not something that usually limits mobility or a player's ability to do things. It's more of just you're afraid to get hit right on that spot again because it's, yeah, bad. It hurts a lot. Obviously, the next man up here, Cooper Kupp is obviously, the best wide receiver in fantasy this year. So the next man up after that, Van Jefferson hauled in a long touchdown pass of his own. He'll likely step up into that wide receiver 2 role and is a decent flex option, in my opinion, if not better. Eric, AJ Brown, we talked about him a little bit last week, but then I was honestly expecting him to be all right and be ready to play. And the next thing I know, he's been added to the IR. Now what?
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
mean, AJ Brown, he's had a really tough season, man. He's dealing with all sorts of injuries in both his upper and lower part of his body. His recent chest and hand injuries, I feel like, are just both freak incidents. I don't really, feel like any of these are particularly correlated, which is good. But he did suffer a blow to his hand when a pass was broken up early in the game. And I mean, you could see him working it out with some therapeutic putty on the bench. He kept playing, and he took a nasty hit from a quarterback to his side of his ribs. And, both of these injuries are really pain tolerance issues. So, they can have nasty inflammatory responses in the acute stages, but, it sounds like the Titans are really just respecting that their star athlete needs time to rest. So they're giving him at least 3 weeks. I think for injuries like these, it's entirely possible, very easy to be back in week 16. But it's really going to be an AJ Brown thing. I think they're going to give him the final say.
Yeah, that seems totally reasonable for a player of that caliber. Tennessee's depth chart is starting to dwindle. I mean, they've already lost Derrick Henry. Julio Jones is on the IR. Their star power is quickly dissipating. Nick Westbrook-Ikine is probably the only receiver that they can rely on right now, and he's, I mean, obviously not a big name, but he's seemed pretty reliable. He had a touchdown this week against one of the better defenses in the league. But they're still, even without Derrick Henry, they're keeping it on the ground. They had 200-yard rushers, albeit both of them had big, costly fumbles this week, but they're getting their run. I don't know. Flip a coin on which one you want to start, Foreman or Hilliard.
What happened to Fersker? Wasn't he supposed to be the next Johnny?
Anthony Ferkser. I mean,
He is the next Johnny. What do you mean?
exactly. Yeah,
He's doing exactly what Johnny did.
a lot of athletic ability and being underused, regardless of the
Okay.
depth chart around him. Yeah,
Touche.
Janu.
Touche. Love it.
Alrighty, moving on to New York, the Giants, Matthew. I feel like we've talked about their receiver room, at least one, if not multiple players, every single week. Sterling Shepard and Kadarius Toney are both listed on the injury report this week. What's going on with those fellas?
Yeah, so they both have quad injuries. Sterling Shepard, we saw strained his, I believe, 2 weeks ago and has been out since. But it's hard to kind of judge these receivers on what their injuries are and if they can play through it. And the Giants are just falling apart, like physically. Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see if they can push through. I mean, once again, kind of one of these things where neither one of these players have been put on IR, so that kind of gives us a little room. Sterling Shepard has missed 2 games now, and so if he misses a third, it's one of those things like, why didn't you just put him on IR? But so that's kind of good news. So, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see with them, and once again, see if they're practicing and if they can play through it. I don't have high hopes really for either of them being able to play through anything. I mean, kind of all the receivers in Giants land this year don't seem to want to play through injury, which it's hard to blame them for that. That team's not really competing either, and the number one in their offense, or at least he's supposed to be, Kenny Golladay, definitely doesn't play through injuries. So it seems like everyone just follows suit.
They quit.
So, yeah. I mean, we'll see. I would expect Shepard to play this week. I mean, we'll see if Tony does, but I definitely don't have high hopes for either of them playing.
Yeah. If one or both of them end up missing, I'm hopeful maybe Saquon can finally get involved in the passing game and get his value back up. Nobody I'm super excited about. Darius Slayton, if you're in a really deep league and desperate at flex, might catch a long touchdown, but not somebody I'm relying on to be a high volume guy.
And we got to remember Mike Glennon's throwing on the ball.
That's right.
Is that a downgrade from Daniel Jones? I don't know.
I don't know. I wonder if he can run 80 yards without tripping.
Probably not as fast, but I bet he can.
We'll see. All righty. Staying in New York, but moving over to the Jets. Eric, Corey Davis, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, I mean, he's been dealing with soft tissue injuries for quite a bit. And, I think the Giants receivers are great examples of this, where, they can just keep cropping up mid-season. And it makes it really tricky for any fantasy manager to anticipate, when can I rely on this person? Or do I need to drop them? How tradable is this person as a risky asset? And I think in real life, the difficult thing is that when you suffer these kinds of injuries, you need 2 phases. You need rest and then time to ramp up your tolerance to physical exercise, which is a stress. And if you don't give an athlete enough of either phase, then they're going to be at risk of missing more time unexpectedly. So, things like this are really tough to predict. I don't know when we can even say Corey Davis is likely to be back, but, I wouldn't count on him this week, and I especially wouldn't count on him the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I was excited to see what he was going to do in New York this year, and he's just seemed to can't stay healthy and can't stay on the field. But Elijah Moore has been for some people, a surprise. Some of us, I don't believe I had him very high, but I said, well, there's a chance because there's not really much competition for targets, and here we are. He's actually playing pretty well. We'll see if he can keep it going with the quarterback questions there as well. Deebo Samuel, last one. Matthew, hold on. But before I ask you about him, I have a PSA to make. I owe Deebo Samuel an apology personally, professionally. From a fantasy football standpoint, I must apologize to all of the managers. I jinxed this young man. I can't remember if it was last week or the week before, but I said, man, somebody we always end up talking about, and he's been off the injury report this year, is Deebo Samuel. And Matthew.
Yes, I 100% blame you for what you've done to Deebo Samuel.
And you told me too. You said you've cursed him.
Yes.
Now, I apologize deeply.
Luckily, though, it does not seem to be that severe of an injury, but he did injure his groin. By all accounts, they said it just kind of tightened up on him, and then he kind of pulled himself out of precaution. They're saying 1 to 2 weeks. He's already doubtful for this week, so don't expect him this week at all. I probably wouldn't expect him next week. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a 2-week injury and then he's back that 3rd week. But yeah, it's very, very unfortunate, the timing of his injury for sure, with it being people fighting for playoff spots and stuff in their leagues. But, he'll be back playoff time, so that's good at least. But it is definitely something to watch, because as we've seen with groin injuries, they can kind of be fickle, as well as hamstring, as like a hamstring injury. But yeah, I imagine he'll miss 2 weeks, and then he'll be back. I'll be pleasantly surprised if he's back in 2 weeks, though.
Yeah, if you drafted Debo and you still have him on your roster, you haven't traded him, or you were somebody who traded for him, it's safe to say you didn't expect him to be a wide receiver 1 this season. So you're likely in decent shape heading towards the playoff push. Hold on to him. Don't give up. Also, I'm sorry. Next man up there, it might finally be time for Brandon Ayuk to turn it around this season and prove that he's not just a flash in the pan. I know he's had a couple of good weeks, but nothing like he did last year. I'm hoping he can kind of turn it around, because that wide receiver tandem, when they're on, is one of the most fun to watch in the league. All righty, let's wrap this thing up. Talk about some tight end injury news. We've only got a few here. Eric, Dan Arnold in Jacksonville. After getting traded to Jacksonville, he's actually kind of been a fairly serviceable fantasy tight end. But he's dealing with a knee injury. What's the latest update on Dan Arnold?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's been a surprise to me just to see the volume of targets he's getting.
Yeah.
And he's been pretty productive with them. But unfortunately, this past week he sprained his MCL, and that's a really big deal for a big athlete like him, who, at times will be asked to block, but he'll definitely be asked to run and, go make a catch. And, we mentioned earlier with Zach Wilson, it's really, really tough to, come back early from these types of injuries. So, I think that unfortunately the Dan Arnold show may be over for the rest of the season, if not the majority of it.
Yeah, tough to see somebody who's kind of breaking out and starting to produce well go down like that, especially a team that's not very target dense in Jacksonville. For our next man up and our notes, I literally just put 3 question marks here. I have no idea who's going to get the ball in Jacksonville. I would say Laviska Shenault, but apparently they hate him. Maybe James Robinson will start catching passes
It'd be
too.
cool if they used Shenault like San Francisco uses Debo, but
oh my gosh, wouldn't it?
It's
almost like they're built similarly and have a fairly similar skill set. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. That doesn't. Nah, that's silly.
Doesn't ring a bell. Okay.
No.
Moving on. Another tight end with another knee injury. Matthew, tell me about Darren Waller in Las Vegas.
So another Thanksgiving bummer.
Yeah.
Darren Waller went out of the game with a knee injury. The initial reports were an IT band issue, which they've kind of, I don't know, I don't want to necessarily say backtrack, but they haven't reported that again since the game, and they haven't really said what's wrong. They just kind of been like, oh, he's got a knee issue going on. So luckily they're listening week to week. He is doubtful this week. So if you have him, prepare to not have him. I have him in a couple leagues, and I've already trying to pick up tight ends to play in his place, because he's not going to play if he's listed doubtful. While we don't know the specifics of the injury, by all accounts, it's not overly serious. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, when I hear IT band, the first thing my mind goes to is definitely not knee. So
yeah,
that
didn't really make sense.
Pretty ambiguous from Vegas, but keep an eye on the practice report. If he doesn't go, Foster Moreau's the tight end to back him up there, but I would expect that it'd be Brian Edwards seeing more targets than anybody there. Eric, close us out here. We've got the tight end tandem in Pittsburgh, both Pat Freiermuth and Eric Ebron dealing with some injuries. Freiermuth in the concussion protocol and Eric Ebron with a knee injury.
Yeah, I mean, these are both really tough to tell, but honestly, if I had to choose one to come back sooner, it might be Freiermuth, just because of the nature of the COVID or the concussion protocol. In theory, he could pass all 5 phases of his return tomorrow. Eric Ebron, he's an older tight end. He will recover slower. Knee injuries are tough for this position group. So, if I'm an Ebron holder, I'm not expecting him back anytime soon. But Freiermuth, I mean, there's hope for him every week at this point.
Yeah, he's been a pleasant surprise as a rookie. If Kyle Pitts wasn't as highly touted as he was, and he deserved all the hype he got, I'm not saying he shouldn't, but if it weren't for Kyle Pitts, I feel like Pat Freiermuth would have been one of the more hyped prospects coming out at any position this league. Like, he's a very good prospect at tight end, and he's shown it this season. Well, that does it for us for injury news. Should we close this thing out with some trivia?
Yes.
I'm ready.
All righty. We're going to change it up a little bit this week. I don't have NFL trivia for you. We're going to test your ortho knowledge.
Ooh.
Oh.
This is good. we should all be fairly comfortable with this. If not, we'll have an in-service after the pod. So let's get to it. I've got 4 questions for you, worth 1 question each. We're doing this rapid fire style. So when you know the answer, just
what do we do?
Should we just say it,
or should we
type it? Okay.
Raise your hand and I will say who said it first. All righty, you ready?
Yes.
Alrighty, first question. We spoke about Deebo Samuel earlier. Last season, in the preseason, he suffered a Jones fracture. What metatarsal is injured with a Jones fracture? Matthew.
You got it, Matt.
The 5th metatarsal.
That is correct. The 5th metatarsal.
Well done.
Yes, sometimes I know things.
Also known as the shoulder blade, the scapula is on your back for those that do not know. How many muscles attach to the scapula?
You got it, Matt.
You can answer.
That wasn't a confident hand raise. I need a confident hand raise.
Oh, wow. Actually, wait, I'm thinking of more now.
Yeah, that's my problem.
Okay, hang on.
There's no penalty for getting it wrong, but you get 1 guess per question.
Oh, okay. I have to rethink again.
How many muscles attach to the scapula?
Okay.
All right, Matthew.
I'm gonna say 6.
6 is incorrect. Eric, do you have a guess?
Oh, jeez. 10.
10 is also incorrect.
What is it?
17.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
I was way off.
The scapula is a very mobile bone and has
Yeah.
a lot of
Right, I was trying to
pull
think
on
of
it.
them all, but
Yeah. Alrighty.
no, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Matthew, speaking of rib injuries earlier, was talking about fractures that can pop up. You may not see a fracture initially on initial imaging, but you may see it later. A bone that is commonly known for this is the scaphoid bone in the wrist. What is the other name for a scaphoid fracture?
Oh, shit. Totally don't remember.
Hold on.
Oh, man.
A lot of times when it's suspected that this bone is fractured, the doctor will go ahead and prescribe a protective brace for it and then do imaging again in 2 weeks. And then the fracture can often be visualized.
Totally.
I know you both know what I'm talking about.
I do, yeah.
You're picturing the brace as we speak.
I totally don't remember.
I'm not gonna lie, I can't think.
Alrighty, time's up. The other name for a scaphoid fracture is a navicular fracture.
Ah, the old navicular.
Yes, that one.
All those little wrist bones. Why do they have more than one name? Alrighty, last question for you. This is about my favorite bony prominence. Where is the xiphoid process located? Eric.
The xiphoid process?
You can point to it if you can't explain where it is.
You're scaring me. Am I thinking of the right xiphoid process now?
There's only one.
Oh, I know there is. Okay, wait. Let me make sure in my head.
You can't pre-raise your hand. You
I
have an
unraised.
answer or not.
I unraised.
All right. He wasn't confident.
Oh, I was confident.
I mean, you exposed yourself last week. You don't have to expose yourself for this one.
Yeah. Unless we all go naked mile, then that would be.
Dude. No, it's a very PG bony prominence. No one? The xiphoid
Hold on.
process.
Xiphoid process.
Quit Googling, Matthew. Just kidding.
I'm not Googling.
I'm out. I'm
Spelled
out
with an X.
Oh,
for those
that's
Googling.
Right? Xiphoid? Right?
No,
No?
that is
What am I
your-
thinking of?
that is your
Hyoid.
hyoid
Mhm.
bone.
The old
Mm.
hello.
Eric,
That's right.
what was your guess going to be?
I abstain. What is the
You
answer?
abstain. The
Yeah.
xiphoid process is the little tip of bone
Oh,
at the bottom of your
yes.
sternum. I don't know why. It was just
I'm an
whenever I
idiot.
learned it, I was like, I love that. I'm
It
a
is.
nerd.
Yeah.
Alrighty,
Mm.
that's nerdy trivia. We'll get back to NFL trivia last week.
Apparently, we suck at our profession.
Hey, Matt, I'm not gonna lie, Matthew. That first question was like, bam! I was like, oh man.
I was so confident.
Wait,
I was
which
like,
ones were you thinking of? Which ones did you count?
Oh, God.
on
Yeah, I need to count scores.
Well, I don't think anyone scored a point.
Matthew
this
got
round.
one. He got the fifth.
No, I got
metatarsal.
Oh yeah, that's
He
right. Well done.
extends his
Really good job. Yeah.
lead.
Yeah.
I knew
Wow.
that one, and then I was like, "Oh, we're gonna do so well on all of these."
Wait, which muscles were you thinking of? Was it?
So I mean, I thought of the rotator cuff muscles,
Mhm.
and
How
then
many? Oh, you want a bonus question?
Yeah.
How many rotator cuff muscles are there?
4.
There are 4. You both get a point.
4.
All right.
6.
Somebody the other day tried to say 5 that the deltoid was one of them. I'm like, stop it.
No,
No,
it's
that's not true.
That's short.
That's
These
not
are
true.
falsehoods.
Get out.
Can
Alrighty.
we get 4 bonus points if we name them all?
No, you can do it for fun though.
Oh, I don't want to do it for fun.
I'll give you a bonus point for each one that you can name and show me the motion for how to test it. How
I
far do we
abstain.
want to
I just do internal and external rotation for them. So.
Alrighty. That's going to do it for us. Trivia update. Matthew is leading by 2 at 13-11 on the year. We've got a few weeks left. We'll do it until the end of the NFL season. So at the end of the year, I've got to come up with some kind of prize that isn't awful. Yeah, let's wrap this thing up with our social media handles. Matthew, where can the lovely folks find you on the interwebs?
They can find me on Twitter at Fantasy Ferret. That's where I spend most of my fantasy football days.
Alrighty. And Eric, where can we find you, sir?
I am the Nighthawk PT. You can find me on Twitter at FF_Nighthawk.
Alrighty. Thank you, gentlemen. To close us out, thank you for the awesome intro and outro music to John C. You can find him for all of your podcast, video, and music needs. jonseemusic@gmail.com. That's JONSEE music@gmail.com. Again, my name is Kyle Allen. You can find me on Twitter at KAllen_4. I'd appreciate if you give us a follow. Let us know what you think. Check out the website, riderdynasty.com, to check out the latest articles from everybody at the site. Thank you to everyone that tuned into the live stream. We really appreciate it. And if you're listening afterwards, we appreciate you just as much. Don't tell the live stream listeners. We might appreciate you a little more if you share it with your friends. Best of luck in your matchups this week. Don't forget that the best ability is availability. Peace.
Adios.